yeah, thank you all for being here. Uh, it's called Pentatonic Power. And just up front, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Um, so if we could, turn off our phones and distractions, like I'm not going to kick you out. If the phone rings, I won't even hear it. I'm just saying for the next hour, we're going to be getting into it. It might be good to just not have any distractions. And feel free, if you have questions along the way, to just drop them in the chat. I'm going to just kind of go through everything, and it's going to get kind of in depth. So I need you to follow along with me. You're going to learn some cool stuff today. But if we get stopped in the middle, it might break the flow and the train of thought. So put them in the chat or just hold on to them. And at the end, I'll stay as long as you like. I got nothing else planned, and I'll answer any questions you might have. So, cool. So you're in the right place here. If you learned a ton of scale shapes, but you still struggle to make your solo sound musical, you don't have hours a day to practice and need a simple and clear path forward. And I can totally relate to that. You're tired of feeling overwhelmed by too much theory and too many notes, or too much information coming at you online or places like YouTube, where you can just feel like inundated with videos and guitar approaches and licks and tricks. And so you want to finally understand the fretboard, right? Instead of just memorizing patterns and licks. You crave more freedom when you're jamming over chord progressions or if you're writing songs. If you've taken lessons before, but you still never quite got how to actually improvise. If you find yourself falling into the same patterns when you play, and you want to break out of that rut. And finally, you want to sound good fast, using the same methods that your favorite players use to understand their nicks. So yeah, if you want to, you can just put if you have one of those, one or two that ring true for you, just drop them in the chat there. If you have anything, I think what really, all of them ring true to me. 4 and 5, yeah, right on. Man, to be able to be free on the neck, I think that's the goal, right? Everything else is just holding you back from that, but that is it, where you can just have your own voice in the guitar. All right, cool. So at the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you guys an excellent workbook that I put together to help you take your pentatonic knowledge to the next level. It includes infographics, links to interactive quizzes that I put together, and some hands-on lessons with custom backing tracks that you can jam along to. So it's nice to meet all of you. I'm Neil Santos, the creator of the Pentatonic Way. I've been playing guitar for 38 years at this point. So I started during the era of guitar heroes like Van Halen and Satriani and Vai in the late 80s and early 90s. And over the years, I played in numerous original and cover bands, and even graduated from Berklee College of Music in 2001. And after that, I opened my own guitar studio and taught thousands of lessons locally. And even though I had all that harmony and theory knowledge that I learned at Berklee, and I just, at that point, transcribed hundreds of songs, I still felt like I couldn't improvise the way I wanted to. Like in the moment, the chords were going by, but I wasn't able to take all that information that I knew about scales and chords and put it together on the neck in a way that let me be like free in the moment, like we're talking about, and create my own voice. So it wasn't until I looked closer at everything Berklee had taught me and viewed it from like a different perspective that everything fell into place. Like only then was I able to look at the guitar neck, and instead of seeing a maze, like to stumble my way through, I saw a playground where I could explore with confidence and have fun playing. And that's what it's all about. So it's the way of looking at scales and chords on the guitar neck that I'm going to show you today. So What are we going to learn today? So there's a reason why so many legendary players use the pentatonic scale as their foundation for their solos. It sounds great, and if you use it correctly, it might be all you need to improvise over most songs, and I'll show you how to do that today. I'm going to show you 2 typical approaches to soloing that most players take and how they can make you feel either trapped and uncreative or not entirely confident about the next note, that the next note you play is going to sound good. And I'm going to show you why focusing on fewer notes and clear patterns will lead you to faster results and more freedom, musical freedom. And lastly, I'm going to show you how I recommend practicing these methods and incorporating them into your playing. By the end of this workshop, you understand what you need to do to create impressive solos and find your voice in the guitar. Creating and following a structured approach that progressively challenges you to become better every time you pick up the guitar is the next step. You're in the wrong place if you're looking for advanced jazz theory deep dives, because this workshop's about keeping it simple and practical and focusing on real-world improvisation using the pentatonic scale. You're in the wrong place if you believe more complexity equals better playing. If you're not open to the idea that simplifying your approach and focusing on feel over flash, it might not be your vibe. There's plenty of flashy things you can do with the pentatonic scale, but that's not what this particular workshop's about. If you're already confidently improvising in any key over any progression and teaching others how to do it, you should probably be hosting this workshop. I could probably learn something from you. Or if you're upset or offended when someone gives you some free training and then makes an offer at the end, I can promise that in this workshop, I'll teach you a ton of stuff that you can apply to your playing right away. And I'm happy to offer it for free because I want other people to experience the same freedom I feel on the guitar. So later on, I will share with you some information about my course, which is designed to help you integrate these ideas I'm showing you tonight into your playing in a structured way. So alongside a group of other players who will keep you on track. It may be just the thing you're looking for. All right, so let's get into it. Why the pentatonic scale works. So how many of you are familiar with this shape, this scale pattern? It's probably the first one most of us learn, and we get so much traction out of it. We play it over everything. And then, that's where the term called getting stuck in the box comes from, right? Let me see if the chat's open. Good. Cool, 4 or 5. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat there. I'm not cool enough to have someone watching the chat for me like some of the workshops, but how about this shape, the major pentatonic? I have a feeling that this one might be a little less familiar with us. When I get to teaching people this in the course, or we start working on using this musically, everybody is like turned upside down because we all have these licks using the first shape that our fingers just go to, right? But now you're using all those same notes, but in a different way. So all those licks sound kind of wacky when you play them over minor chords. So you have to come up with a whole new bag of tricks for your major chord. And then, so these are just 2 of the pentatonic shapes. They're actually 2 from a group of 5 that make up like the entire pentatonic scale on the neck. So if you could put it in the chat, how many of you have memorized all 5 shapes? It's okay if you haven't. I recommend learning them all at some point because the benefits you're going to get from this is just, worth the effort, I guess. But yeah, you don't need to know them all. But the cool thing about them is, if you don't know, they all fit together like a puzzle piece. So I'll show you a graphic from my course that kind of illustrates that. So you can see how they all just go right together like a puzzle piece. So if you looked at them like that, all closed up, it might look a little intimidating. But if you take them pattern by pattern and work them all the way up the neck, it opens up the entire fretboard for you. So that's why I recommend at some point learning all 5. It's not that difficult when you get to it. There's only 2 notes per string, and just take 1 chord a week, 1 shape a week, and just kind of learn it. But yeah. So to understand why the pentatonic scale works so well for improvising, it helps to know where they come from and how they're created. So you guys might recognize this. This is the do re mi scale, the C major scale, right? So to create the pentatonic scale out of this, the major pentatonic, we're taking 5 notes out of it. All right, so we're going to take the first note, the root note. We're going to take the second note, or you can call it the 9th note. It's like a tension, because there's 8 notes from C to C, and then you go to D, and that would be your 9th note. That's why they call them 9ths and 11ths and 13ths. We'll call it the second. Then you have the 3rd, 5th note, and the 6th note. So that makes up your entire, plus the C at the end, makes up your entire major pentatonic, all right? And the reason why it's such a great scale for improvising is because there's no half steps. So the C major scale is built up of whole steps and half steps, right? So whole steps are 2 frets apart. That's C to D. Then you got D to E. Then you got E to F. We have a half step. But if you play those at the same time, you get this harsh dissonance, So by getting rid of the F and the B, because in between B and C, you have that harsh dissonance. That makes it so anything you play is going to have a nice sound, and you're not going to end up into any of those situations where you're clashing with whatever chord's being played behind you. So we can look at dropping those things out of there. Those are the troubled areas. And the cool thing is, for C, you have all your chord tones here. So to make a C chord, you need C, E, and G, right? And then it adds the color tones that you can add, the tensions or color notes that are acceptable, I guess is a good word for it, or traditionally used over major chords, because they're not like dissonant, right? So you have the 9th, which has a really nice sound over major chords. Or you have the 6th, major 6, which sounds good over major chords. And then it's great because, like I said before, you have these avoid notes, these ones that you skip. So that's how they build the major scale. Now, if you play the C major scale but start on A and go to the next A, you get the minor scale, the natural minor. So A, B, C, back to A. Now, how you get the minor scale out of it is you take the first note, you take the 3rd note, you take the 4th, the 5th, and then the flat 7, and then you're back to the root note again, right? So that's the beginning of that first pentatonic pattern we all know and love it. Again, it gets rid of these half steps, these dissonant notes, that would happen between C and B. It sounds pretty bad. Or you got E and F here. Gets rid of those. So you can feel confident just throwing your fingers around in the scale, and it's going to sound great no matter where you land. Again, it focuses using A, C, and E. Those are your tritones, your arpeggios for the A minor. You have your color notes, your D and your G. In this case, it uses flat 7. That's your color tone, which is kind of cool, because you can play over dominant chords with it. Dominant chords in pentatonics work great because you can play major pentatonic or minor pentatonic, depending on what you want to do. And you'll see that a lot in blues and stuff. They'll mix major and minor pentatonics, which is handy. It has a cool sound. So, and you avoid these avoid notes, right? So no harsh dissonances. So cool. That's 3 reasons the pentatonic scale works so well. It's built from the strongest notes, the chord tones, the root. So yeah, the chord tones, the root, the third, and the fifth. It has the appropriate tensions and color notes for each chord's tonality. So for major chords, you got the 9th and the 13th, or, the 2nd and the 6th. And for minors, you have the 11th and you have the flat 7th. Cool. And it works equally well over major, minor, and dominant chords. So if you had a dominant chord, like say Purple Haze, right? That's E7 with a sharp 9. You can use the minor pentatonic on E. Works perfectly fine. That's what Jimmy used too. So another great reason to use pentatonics is it reduces mental load. So if you look at these 2 shapes, these 2 scale patterns, which one looks easier to memorize to you? For me, it's the pentatonic scale on the right, simply because it only has 2 notes per string, rather than all these sort of. That's a lot to memorize and work your fingers around. It's good to know those too, but I'd say if you're going to invest the time, learn the pentatonics first, because as you can see, they're also like the foundation of a major scale. All those notes that we take out of the major scale to make the major pentatonic, you can adjust them. You can move them up, so like you can make a sharp 4, or flat 7 and stuff. So this is like the architecture of major chords, and the minor one is architecture for minors. So I'd start with the pentatonics. But fewer notes equals faster decisions in the moment when you're jamming, able to see the shapes, and you're able to express yourself more freely, Cool. So what's holding you back? Even if you know the 7-note major and minor scales or all the shapes of the pentatonic scale, you might feel like your solos don't sound like the ones played by your favorite guitarists, or even the solos you hear in your head. So let's take a look at 2 typical approaches that I see many players take when improvising over chord progressions. So the first approach I see people take, and I've done both of these things in my time, is you take one 7-note scale to play over all the chords, right? So with this approach, you can feel like you're stumbling around in the dark, since the function of each of those 7 notes changes as the chords change underneath. So some may sound good 1 second and the chord changes and then they don't sound good. So you end up kind of constantly moving around in search of the next right note. I heard someone compare this approach to throwing paint at a canvas and hoping that the Mona Lisa pops up. The second approach is one pentatonic scale over all the chords, right? So I've done this as well. So it can leave you feeling like you're trapped in a box with access to only a handful of notes to get creative with, and your phrases don't blend in as well with the chord progression as you'd like, and you quickly run out of ideas. You use up all your pentatonic scales from that shape right at the beginning, and then if the jam is long, I've been in 10-minute jams over one chord, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to switch it up. So those are the 2 different approaches that I see guitarists make a lot, and that's what holds them back. So if you have an approach, one of these that kind of rings true to you, drop it in the chat. I'd love to I'd love to hear what you have to say. I guess I started with the first one when I was younger, and I just blazed through everything. I'd be like, all right, cool. And if I ever stopped, I'd just like cross my heart and hope that I got to the, I landed on the right note or something. So, and then later I would just do the other thing where it's like, all right, so the chord progression starts in E minor, right? And it does all these other chords. So I just play E minor for everything. Whatever the first chord is the key, and just kind of go with it. But I'm going to show you a better way. So kind of combining both of these things is what's going to give you the best of both worlds, all right? So what we're going to need to do is we'll pick this chord progression, right? Because chord progressions are what we jam over, improvise over. I picked this one because this is like the most popular chord progression in the world or whatever. Like 1 million songs have been written on it. If you ever saw that Access of Awesome video where they're like singing like 100 different tunes over this one chord progression. So you got C, G, A minor, F. Then land down under. Oh, whatever. Sorry about the singing. Please don't leave. I won't sing again. So we're going to look at that, and I'm just going to stack them up here so we can like examine each of the chords. We're going to identify the chord tones and the color tones we should focus on when improvising for each of these chords, which will make our licks sound more dialed in and blend seamlessly with the chord progression. So for the first one, like we were saying, for C, you want C, E, and G. And then our color notes, our ninth and our sixth, are D and A, right? For G, we want to do G, B, and D. Our color notes will be A and E, A and E. For A minor, it's Ace, A, C, E, and our color tones are D and G. And lastly, for F, we want F, A, C, almost face there, that's how I remember it. And our color tones, again, D and G, right? So let's look at, if we took the first approach with this, C, what will we get? 1 7-note scale over all the chords. So we have the tritone, right? The C, E, and G, that's there. And you're going to find that with all the 7-note scales. We have the D and the A, our color tones are there. But then we have the two, avoid notes. So when you're jamming on this, if that's your approach and you want to do 7-note scales, but you want to play melodically, so you want to play something slow, that's the most risky thing when you do this, because you don't want to like land on this F while someone's playing an E in the chord. You're going to have to keep moving. You thought you were going to be able to stop, but then you're like, oh no, I got to resolve and stuff. And it doesn't really sound like you probably want it to, also with the B. So let's see if we use C major pentatonic over a C. We end up with the chord tones again, which is great. We got the color tones. That's perfect. And we don't have any avoid notes, which is cool. So if you move on and check out G, and now we're still using the same approach, we're going to use that C major over it. We're going to end up with the chord tones and the color tones. Now our avoid notes have changed, right? So if you're still jamming in C, now once the chord goes from C, so now you have to avoid the F and the C instead of the F and the B. You got to keep that in mind, right? So that's too much for me to keep in my mind already. I'm just like, nope, I can't do that, especially if it's fast, like a bluegrasser. Get it? So if we use the C major pentatonic over it, we have a couple of the chord tones. We got the root, and we got the fifth. And one note that we're missing, though, is the third. And that's not ideal, because that's the note that gives us the tonality, either major or minor, right? So that's not a great option. We do have both color notes if we use that scale. And then we have one of the avoid notes. So if we're using C major pentatonic over a G, we got to make sure that we're not really jamming on that C note too much, and just kind of deal with the fact that we don't have the third in there, you know? So it's not an ideal choice for us. Now, C major and A minor are twins, right? C is the happy twin, and A minor is the sad twin. They're kind of related. I don't know if you guys know that about chords. There's diatonic chords. There's always a happy twin and a sad twin. We can get into that sometime. You can ask me questions at the end about that if that's a new concept. But yeah, they're related. So we're going to find that shares a lot of the same notes with C here. So we have all of our chord tones. We have our two color notes. But then again, F and B are our avoid notes. So we have to go back from F and C when we're playing over G. Now we have to avoid F and B. So that's not good. And we'll find if we use C major pentatonic, that it's the twin of A minor. So it's also A minor pentatonic. So we end up having all our chord tones and we have our two color notes. So that is a good choice for A minor, C major pentatonic. Lastly, if we go look at F, we have all our chord tones. We have the two color notes, 9 and 13. But now our avoid notes are E and B. So when you go to F, now you got to make sure you don't play the E and B too long. They don't land on them on a strong beat or just linger there, because it's going to sound like you didn't mean to do it or something. Or if you do it, make like a really cool guitar phase so people think it's on purpose. And be like, oh, no, he means that, you know. That goes a long way. But if we use C major pentatonic on it, we end up with some of our chord tones. We got the 3 and the 5, but we don't have the root, which isn't ideal. We do have both of our color tones, which is cool. But we also have an avoid note with that E. So, try to avoid that if you can, unless it's a 7th chord, then it might work out. So you can see these might not be the best ways to play it. If you play the 7-note scale, you got to keep track of those avoid notes. Or if you're playing the 1 pentatonic scale, it'll probably sound good, but you won't have all the chord tones you want. It won't sound like it's really tailored to the chord progression, right? So if we go back to the major, C major, and if I just remove all the avoid notes from each one, for each chord, we end up with 5 notes, right? So if I just rearrange these and rename them, and I put them in order, this is what you end up with, right? So you get the C major pentatonic for the C, you get the G major pentatonic for the G, A minor pentatonic for the A minor, and of course F major pentatonic for the F major. So that's pretty cool. That's the whole trick, right? Now let's see how that looks on the neck. So we're going to use these two shapes that we're familiar with to put them on the neck, right? So where the blue dot is the root note. So if I wanted to play C major, I'd put that second shape right on the C. Now that's going to sound great. Now for G, if I was going to do that, I'd have to take that second shape and move it down to the 3rd fret, because that's where your G is, right? And for A minor, we'll use that first shape that we all know. We're going to put that on the 5th fret, right? Because that's the A note. And then by playing this shape, that makes it A minor. And finally, for F, we have to go all the way down to that 1st fret. That's where F is. And we're going to have some open notes here. So that is all going to sound amazing. Again, it's not ideal, right? So you'd have to play like a C up here. Jumping all over the place. So the next step in doing this is kind of moving them all into one position. So if you look at the G here, And this is where learning the 5 shapes really comes in handy, right? Is because now you go, oh, I got to move up there. So I'd move up, the 3rd shape. And then it's not close enough. So then I played the 4th shape right there. All right, that's cool. You can switch between those. And the A minor, it's close, but it could be better. So you just move that up. So you're going to play the 2nd shape, just like with C. Same shape, but those notes are going to react differently because someone's playing an A minor under it rather than a C. And you're going to have to play, you'll find different licks, that work with the C as opposed to A minor. And then lastly, our F is way down there. So we got to move that up. So we do the 3rd shape, 4th shape, and then the 5th shape, right? So now they're all within the same kind of 4 frets. And if we took all of these shapes, kind of superimpose them on each other, the result would be the C major scale. You would have the whole thing. But instead of thinking about what notes not to play, right, those avoid notes and going, oh, I got to do FB, FC, then I got to do EB, that's too much. All you need to do is kind of know where to play these pentatonic shapes on the neck, right? So if I was to jam on this, let me just record the loop real quick. So we got C, G, A minor, all right. So here's G, so A minor, and then F. I. Yeah, I think that sounds pretty great. I mean, it blends with the chords as they go by. Even if there was no backing track underneath, I feel like we could still hear the chord changes in the phrases I'm playing. You know what I mean? And that's the trick. That's the whole thing about it, is you don't even need accompaniment. You can just jam on stuff and you can hear it. And you can take pentatonic scales. They don't always have to be single notes. You can find cool chords in there. C with a 9. Just start throwing notes. To G, A minor, and because there's no dissonance, you can, if you know where the shapes are, you can just throw your fingers wherever you want to go. So it adds that sort of freedom that you can say, I'm just going to throw my finger here, and that will trigger a memory of a lick or like a melody or some sort of music that you have in your subconscious, that all of a sudden you go, oh, all right, that sounds like this. And then you follow in the shape, and that way you're totally free. You're improvising in the moment. You're making up licks on the go, and it's all kind of based on your taste and your memories, which ultimately leads you to finding your own voice in the guitar, because no one has the same memories as you or the same taste or whatever. So it's really changed the way I look at the neck. And I feel like it will for you too. So hopefully you find this useful, right? So, like, to me, this approach addresses all these challenges that we looked at in the beginning, right? When you're learning to improvise, you get the pentatonic scale. It naturally sounds great because they emit the dissonant intervals. When used in the way I just showed you, they give you the freedom to take chances, since you have the confidence that every note will sound correct with the underlying music. And by focusing your practice on improving and becoming more proficient at seeing the neck in this way, you have a clear path to follow and will notice yourself getting better every time you pick up the guitar. Whether it's for 5 minutes or all day, you're constantly reinforcing and seeing the fretboard more clearly, right? So now that you know the secret, I'd let you know the secret. What are your options? What's next? Option one is you take this info, you try to piece it all together on your own, maybe waste time, I don't know, get frustrated, likely give up before seeing real progress. I only speak from experience. I've done that same thing. Or option two, follow a proven step-by-step system with my support and start making real music with confidence. So with that in mind, I'd like to invite you all to check out or join my upcoming 8-week course called How to Solo Over Anything. It's a step-by-step course that shows you how to confidently improvise over any chord progression using this simple pentatonic strategy. You get a bunch of stuff, and I'm really proud of this course. There's a lot in it. I've run it many times now, and everybody gets so much out of it. So it's 8 weeks long, so it's not open-ended. It's like 8 weeks. We work together. Every week you get a new lesson. Each lesson has a backing track, a video lesson to go along with it. Actually, multiple backing tracks, because I make different style tracks to try out. Comes with the worksheets, and everybody in the course learns it. And then at the end of the week, we all meet up for an hour and a half Zoom call, and we present our video, so we post our video during the week, and then we come back and everybody goes in the hot seat, which isn't that hot, more like the lukewarm seat, because mostly we're just giving feedback, we're giving praise, and we're saying, all right, if you want to take it to the next level, you might think of this or think of that, everybody's always super supportive. You get lifetime access to all the stuff. So even after the 8 weeks, you have access to all the materials. You have access, we meet 9 times. So once at the beginning of the course and then once at the end. And you get access to all those recorded, videos. And you get access to all the recorded videos from prior students. So I've run it 4 times now, I think, and that's what's 4 times now? 32 other videos. Wait, is that right? No. 4 times, 36. Sorry. Yeah, so it's really amazing, and it's structured. We kind of it builds upon each other. You'll learn to unlock the neck using the pentatonic way system that I just outlined. And I promise you, if you go through it, it's going to change the way you see the neck forever. It's going to be your foundation. And one of my students said, all that other stuff he learns on YouTube and everything else he learns out there, this is the why. It all comes back to here. And now you're going to be able to apply it to this knowledge. You go, oh, that's using this scale, which is kind of related to this pentatonic. So you're going to have this sort of architecture to build upon, You're going to play smarter, not harder, right? So it's a simple system to help you, improvise melodically without overwhelming yourself with theory. I believe music theory is beneficial to learn, but I don't want it to be a roadblock for someone to be able to solo or express themselves in the guitar. So there's just enough in here to get you started. I believe that children learn to talk, and it's the same for musicians. You should be able to learn how to play and then figure out what you're doing, learn the rules. It's like a balancing act. 3, you're going to see real progress, because the way I built this is each lesson in this course builds upon the previous one. So it's never too much to make you feel overloaded. And we focus on 1 progression per week, and we review our progress before moving on to the next lesson, like I was saying. You got to learn, if you're a visual learner like me, you got to learn visually. I got you covered. I created a wide range of videos, infographics, interactive graphics, and guided backing tracks, which are great to make your learning experience as easy as possible. So it's all about reducing the mental load so you can focus on the information and actions that will really help you level up. So all my custom backing tracks, say it's 2 chords, it has on the screen as it plays where to play the scale, right? So you don't even have to think about what scale am I playing, when do I switch? You just watch the screen. So that way you can just play with your fingers and watch it and just listen and hear what's happening on the neck and in your music, and I think you're going to be surprised at how good you sound, how quickly you sound great. And you're going to play stuff. I know it happened to me where I'm like, hey, that sounds like a thing someone played, or that sounds like something someone that knows what they're doing would play, So I want you to have that experience. And then like the unique part of the course, and probably the best part, is you'll be going through it with other players. We meet up every week and we work together to become the best players we can be. So you'll gain the benefit of hearing their questions, watching their performances, and hearing my feedback for them on theirs. And they'll learn just as much from watching you learn. So, and also showing up every week, I hear from a lot of players, it lends a lot of accountability, right? It's not a course you just take and then you forget about it. So if you do the work and show up week after week, you'll find yourself improving as well as everybody else. That's my favorite part, is just to watch everybody get better. So what's the cost for this? It's an 8-week course, 9 lessons, 9 meetups, hour and a half. The typical cost on the website is $500. That's, 3 months of in-person lessons, recorded, focused, that you're going to, at the end of it, be a guitar ninja, or at least on your way. You know what I mean? Like you're going to be able to take what we learned in those 8 weeks and just keep learning. I teach you to teach yourself, really, by the end of it. So, but for the next 24 hours, I can take 15% off for you guys for being here. That should have a $sign on it. It's not just 425 anythings. But actually for the next hour, I want to take 20% off for $400. And you would just put the coupon code SOLO20, right? If you want to do that. Or if you want to think about it, do it over the next 24 hours, SOLO15. And I'll show you where to do that. So what happens next, you go to this link, and I'll send this out. I'll drop it in the chat, actually, if you guys want to check it out. I'll have to do that after. I can't drop it in right now. But yeah, easy enough. If you can also just go to pentatonicway.com and click on the courses or how to solo over everything, you'll see this page. This is the sales page. You can learn a whole bunch about the course. You see testimonials from past students. You can check out some of those interactives I talked about. There's a behind the scenes video. So check that out. When you're ready, you can click this, take you to the purchase page. This is where you can claim your spot, right? So you click here, drops into your cart. Now I have the option, you can either pay all at once or you can pay over 5 monthly installments of $99. And actually the coupon code works on either one. Even if you do the monthly payments, it still takes the 20% off. And you just drop that coupon code here and you finish the process of signing up. So that's what I have for you guys. I have plenty of time for questions. So please ask anything that pops up, any burning guitar questions that you have. It doesn't even have to be about this. I'm here for you. And then after that, I'll wrap it up and I'll be able to give you the workbook, and I'll just send it along to you through email too. But yeah, do we have any questions? All right. Yeah. Jared asked the Sad Twins, a new concept. So let's see. I think you guys can see me on the camera. Let me add a little bit more light. Mostly you just have to hear it. So like a diatonic chords are built from one scale. So say C major, right? So by jumping, like leapfrogging over every other note, so you start on C, you jump over every note, so you get the C, E, and G. That's how you get those. And then say you went up to the D and do the same thing, you're going to get D minor. Then you do it again, you're going to get E minor. Now we're just only using notes from the C major scale. You got F major, G major. You got A minor, that's your 6th chord. And then you get your 7th chord, which is like D diminished, right? And then you're back to C. Now, the notes of C are C, E, and G, right? And the notes of A minor are A, C, and E. So they share like 2 of the 3 notes, each of them, C, E, G. And actually, if you do A minor 7th, you get, wait here. You get like A, C, E, and G. So you have all of it. And you just, it's like taking a C major and adding an A to it in the bass. So there's 3 groups, I'm sorry. So for your 1 chord, we'll stay in C, sorry about that. For our 1 chord, the 6th minor is its sad twin. For your 4 chord, your 2 minor is your sad twin. Let me see. And that would be D minor. And then for E major, oh no, sorry, I keep jumping keys. I don't know why. I'm thinking A. So for your 5 chord, your G, your sad twin is going to be the 3 minor. So you have 4 primary chords, 1, 4, 5, and then you have 3 minor chords. You got your 6, you got your 2, and your 3. Now each of those share a pentatonic shape too, right? So the same pentatonic shape you play over F is the same pentatonic shape you play over D minor. So that even reduces that cognitive load, that sort of thinking in the moment that you have to do. Because a lot of times if you have a 4-chord progression that's diatonic, 2 of those chords are going to share the same shape. So you don't even have to think about it. You just kind of play that same shape. So you only usually have about 3 shapes you have to keep in your mind, just like we did here, where C and A shared the same shape. So that's pretty cool. Does that answer your question? Sometimes it's easier to look on a diagram too. I have things on the site that might make it easier to see and understand, but basically your 1, 4, 5 match up with your 6, 2, 3. Cool, yeah. So Jared asked, yes, thank you. Next question. You're able to pick which scale to use within a box area on the neck, like around the 5th fret. How does one know which scale shape to use? Okay, yeah, so that is kind of what I get into in the course. But basically, what I try to do, and this is what I teach people, is to learn the 5 shapes. You said you learned those. And then I show them 3 major chords voicings and then 3 minor chord voicings. And you probably know a lot of them. So here's your major chord, like your A major, right? And so that one you would associate the 2nd shape of the pentatonic with. And then say you want to do a D right there. That would be that, right? That major shape. So I know that that is the 5th shape of the pentatonic. Right? And then say I wanted to play E. I use this major chord. So those are all 3. This one's kind of like if you took a D chord up the neck. So now it's E, but then I kind of extend it down. And I was talking to Graham earlier. I think they call this the C shape in the cage system, but I think of it as D, right? Because it has the little D there. So I know that is actually the 4th shape of the pentatonic. So as fast as I can think of the chords, like someone's, all right, let's play A, D, E. I'm like, all right. I know I can just A, D, E, F, A, right? as far as I know that, now I know all the shapes. Right? And then it's like, oh, I know also I could play A here, right? So that's the 5th shape. I can play D here in the 10th fret. I could play E here, so that's kind of farther back, but I know because that's the 5th shape, kind of like what I did by moving those shapes up, I can just move up to the 1st shape here and play that over the E, which can lend to some cool stuff. Like you can do that Hendrixy stuff. So say you're jamming E, you know, or I could play A here, right? Or actually up here, and that would be the 5th shape. I know that D is here, so that was the 2nd shape before, but if I move it up to the 3rd shape, I can play it there. So same with E, that's your 2nd shape. So I know it's a long answer, but the idea is to associate the scale shapes with chord shapes you already know. And typically, there's 3 major, like I said, those 3, and one of them may be a little bit unfamiliar, but it's totally useful. That's an amazing chord, and you can do some cool things with that too. So you associate the major shapes with that. And then like for minor, it's the same. You got your minor, A minor, you got your D major. Now your E might be weird. It's this weird, like, which is really the same, like your D minor, that, and then I just associate that with the 2nd shape or move up to the 3rd shape. You associate them with the shapes, and then you kind of over time fill in like, all right, so I'm playing E down here, but I want to jam up here. So I know I can use a 2nd shape and move up to the 4th shape, up to the 1st shape. And that's what I show in the course. We kind of start looking at major and minor, and then the next week we look at like minor chords going back and forth. And the next week we look at major chords. And we spend a lot of time with major chords because people aren't as familiar with it, right? So we go in between 2 major chords and then, using that major shape. And then we learned another major chord shape and used a different scale, trying to keep it simple, using that same shape back and forth. And then we switch shapes and stuff. So it all kind of builds up. We then get into like major and then minor going back and forth. And then like the 1-4-5 progression or, into just incorporating some minors into the majors. We even look at playing non-diatonic stuff, which is pretty wild. Like, usually it'd be tough to jam on something that was like major, and then this just doesn't appear in any diatonic. Like if you had D major and then E flat minor, that's not in any diatonic scale really. But all you have to do is just approach it the same way. You have D major, play E minor, E flat minor. So you can play over the wackiest chord progressions because you're just going chord by chord. You're not thinking about like, oh, these 4, chords are in this key, and then these 4 and this one, then it goes to this key for 2, and that's kind of what they showed me at Berkeley, and I just couldn't do it. I saw other people do it. I just couldn't figure it out. I'm like, how do you guys process all that? If I can just go chord by chord by chord, I could go all night. Just tell me what the chord is at that moment, and I can jump to it because I've set up in my brain these sort of like shortcuts that I show in the course, and it makes it easier, for people to just do that too and just jump on it. All right. That was another long answer. I'm sorry. Did that help? I hope so. Of course. You're welcome. Other questions people ask sometimes are, about the course in particular is, you know, what if I can't make all the video chats, the group coaching? That's fine. I've had some people that come to just a few, and then they have access to the recording, so they watch the recordings and ask questions there. Another question I get is, I'm not sure that I'm, qualified or whatever at the right level. But like, as you can see, like if you can play chord progressions with some bar chords and you follow along, you can kind of play in time, you're good to go. If you're just starting to learn, soloing, it's better to start here, or if you're like already kind of like I was, where you can kind of solo and kind of, find your way around. But I was no jazz guy by any means, and I still am not. But I wasn't as confident in my playing as I saw other people at Berklee. I was in a film scoring major, so I could write for orchestras, right? And conduct orchestras and, write for all these instruments. And I understood the theory and everything, but to put it on the neck, it just wasn't clicking, until I looked at it this way and I said, oh my God, it's so simple. Like, I wish I had thought of this when I was there. I would have had such a different experience, been able to jam with more people and not feel like inferior. That was a pretty crazy place to be, but anyway, if you can play chord progressions, I'm going to show you what scales go with those and make it super easy for you to follow along with any old jam. Do you guys have any other questions? What's your favorite chord progressions? What's something you'd like to be able to jam on? Cool. That's all right. I guess I could wrap it up. Unless anybody has any more questions, I am going to send out the workbook for you. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. Some cool, fun quizzes I put together that are from the beginning of the course, where you have to put the pentatonic shapes in order, or name the notes of the top two strings, because that's important for placing the pentatonic scales. What else? You have to find the pentatonic shapes in a whole bunch of different random made up pentatonic shapes. That's kind of fun. Like, where's Waldo for pentatonic shapes? And there's a couple of backing tracks there. One for major, one for minor, and one where it switches from A minor to C major. So like I was saying, where you're playing that one shape and the chords changing underneath, you're going to be able to feel that if you jam over that track. So I'd love to hear how it goes. If you have fun with those, just reach out to me. And I hope to see you guys in the class. It's an amazing course. I love teaching it, and I love to see everybody progress and have these aha moments where they're like, oh, I get it, or whatever. Like one guy was able to finally jam with his band. He was in this jazz band, and he was able to finally kind of jam, and he brought a record, and he's like, look at the other day we played a show, and I took this solo on this tune, and it didn't sound awful. And I was like, oh, that's great. I thought it sounded good. He was just learning. He was just a couple weeks into learning this stuff, and it sounded all the right notes. Like, it's going to give you all the right notes, and then you can start adding licks and techniques and find your own sort of way through it and stuff. Add your own flair. But I hope that you enjoyed this. It was a pleasure for me. I want to say thank you. And look in your inbox, and I'll send that workbook right along, as well as the replay of this recording if you want to review it. So, all right. Thank you. Thanks, guys. I will talk to you later. All right.